So there's a core group of us that has launched the group Checks and Balances today, and the group really stands for the rule of law. It is a group of conservative lawyers, many of whom have deep connections to the conservative legal movement over decades. And these folks are basically saying, you can support certain things, Republicans, conservatives can support certain things that the president or the administration has done, but there has just been too much undermining of the rule of law. And this gets to the attacks on the free press, the Justice Department, the general approach of not upholding the Constitution. And so this group is saying, people, especially on the conservative side, particularly in this moment, need to stand up for the Constitution and stand up for these foundational principles.
One of the stories we're following right now, Francesca, is Melania Trump really flexing her muscle and going public, telling her husband, the president, that she wanted a national security official fired. What was your reaction to that?
Speaking of battling spouses,
that's right
now.
Yeah,
this is pretty extraordinary to see a first lady. I mean, it wasn't the first lady who spoke out, to be clear. It was her spokesperson who spoke out. But to see a first lady's office speak out and call for the firing.
But it's presenting the position
That's
clearly
right.
of Melania Trump, right?
That's right. But that being said, in this White House, we have seen warring factions for nearly 2 years. And this time it's the East Wing versus the West Wing, and that's a little bit unusual. But usually in the West Wing, how many times have we seen different areas of the West Wing and different advisors to the president pushing different aspects and then pushing those points into the public to try and persuade the president? So it sounds like the First Lady's office just did the same exact thing.
It's unusual. I wonder, Carrie, if you look at that and have any sort of reaction to it, is there an ethical concern?
Well, I look at it really from a national security practitioner perspective as well, which is that this is an individual, as I understand, who works with the National Security Council. And that's a little different, I think, for policy folks in Washington to think about the First Lady, if there's we don't know sort of what the reasons are behind this. It's not entirely clear to me.
We do know some. I will say it appears that there were some issues about the First Lady's Africa trip. There was a feeling that that Mira Ricardel retaliated when it came to, or certainly those even around her, or that she retaliated not giving resources for this trip, that there's some bad blood. There's a history of some bad blood. The
concern from the policy community and the national security community would be this might be overstepping into an area that really, and national security policy professionals have been stressing this so much, shouldn't be subject to political influence. The national security piece is sort of a separate piece, and if this person is a national security policy professional, then she should be under the purview of the national security advisor, not the First Lady.
Is it different, though, when you're First ladies have had their way before, but it's the public nature of it that I think is so much different, right?
And the White House is pushing back, might I add, very furiously on this. I had a senior White House official reach out to me just last night to say that Mira Ricardel hasn't even met the First Lady, so they're not entirely sure how this bad blood generated so aggressively. I also had the White House telling me yesterday, as it was reported, that she may have been escorted out or fired already, that hadn't happened, that she's still working there. And so, again, there's various aspects and factions trying to use the media here very clearly to spin their own narrative on this.
I think a little bit of the bigger picture that I think pervades this administration some is the idea that professionals, whether it's the Justice Department, whether it's the National Security Council and the White House, are being dismissed or potentially dismissed on the whim of perhaps the president or the First Lady, as opposed to on the grounds of something actually substantive or merit-based. And that's a concern for people, you know, someone like myself who used to work in government and the civil service.
All right, Carrie Cordero, thank you so much. Francesca Chambers, really appreciate you being here with us today. Right now in Florida, as the GOP's cries of fraud get louder, a judge is deciding whether thousands of tossed ballots will be in play. I'm going to speak with Rick Scott's top campaign advisor next. And speaking of Rick Scott, it is a picture